Welcome back to Stop the Takes. I'm Dakota, that is Austin, and today we are giving best and worst case scenarios for the 2025 upcoming NFL season for all AFC teams. Go division by division, breaking down what our thoughts are in terms of what the best outcome and worst outcomes would be. Caveat to that is a lot of this is going to be dependent on player specific stuff. We're not necessarily looking at like the outcome of the season itself, your win loss. Does that mean you had the best or worst case scenario? But more so of what some of these teams learn. Quarterbacks will obviously play a pretty big role in that. But yeah, without further ado, Austin, how are we feeling?
Yeah, feeling pretty good, man. It's gonna be a fun discussion talking about these teams' best and worst case scenarios. It's gonna be interesting because a lot of teams, like kind of like you were saying, a lot of teams' best case scenario isn't necessarily winning this year. Like obviously, technically, the best case for every team is a Super Bowl, right? Like every team wants to win a Super Bowl, but fan bases know that that's not realistic for every team, right? I'm a Colts fan. I know it's not realistic to expect a Super Bowl this year. It's just not in the loaded AFC. So some teams' best case might be draft position, or like you said, Dakota, figuring out your franchise quarterback and having him locked up on a rookie deal and things like that. So it's not always about whether you win it all or not, because that's not realistic for every team. So we're trying to keep it realistic, but talk about best and worst case scenarios.
Yeah, and the same would be true on the worst side, right? So, like, to be honest, I don't know if it would be the worst case scenario for any team to get the number one overall pick. For some, it may actually be their best case scenario, which we'll get into at some point. But I mean, even if we're sitting here saying that the Chiefs have the number one overall pick, things had to have gone catastrophically wrong, and we would be saying, "Oh my God, Patrick Mahomes is about to have a number one overall pick," or they're trading it for an absolute haul. So all right, without further ado, then let's jump in. So we're gonna switch things up slightly from other videos we've done. We'll go out west first, starting with the AFC West, and specifically with the Denver Broncos. Austin, what is the best case scenario for the Broncos?
Well, I think the Broncos, they have a good roster, right? They have one of the more solid rosters in the league. I think a lot of their best case scenarios surrounds Bo Nix. I mean, that's going to be the conversation with a lot of these teams. Is going to be the quarterback. I think Bo Nix kind of outdid expectations last year. He had a really good rookie season. Looked really good as a rookie. Started especially cooking towards the end of the year, middle to the end of the year. They made the playoffs. I didn't really expect them to make the playoffs last year, but a couple guys broke out. So I think their best case scenario, man, is to continue to build on that, continue to see more from Bo Nix. I think another part of their best case scenario is maybe seeing one of these young wide receivers that they have take a next step. They have several young wide receivers that just have, like, Cortland Sutton's been good. But he's not been great. He hasn't like reached that level yet. And then a couple guys like Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims who have been inconsistent. I think Marvin Mims has been useful. I think Troy Franklin showed that he can get open. He just showed he just drops a lot of those open passes. So a lot of those guys taking the next step would be huge. Troy and Bo getting on the same page since they played at the same college together. I think that's part of their best case. I don't see them making a run at a Super Bowl, but I could see them, with how good their roster is, getting Jahdae Barron in the draft. I could see them making a run at the AFC Championship game. I could see that as their best case.
I think I'd pretty much agree with that. Yeah, I think, and I don't want to like make Broncos fans upset, but like the range of outcomes for quarterbacks is it's you're not the likelihood that Bo Nix does just become the next Josh Allen or something like that isn't necessarily super high. So obviously that would be a great scenario, but I think him not regressing, because we've seen that a lot lately, with CJ Stroud and other quarterbacks where like a second year regression happens, specifically when they outdo what you thought they would, because then it's kind of easy to regress because you set the expectations higher than what they were. So I think honestly, him just not taking a step back at all would be great. And then to your point, like the supporting cast that's been built around him now elevates him. I think that would be the best, is to see those guys, those receivers, and RJ Harvey they drafted and JK they brought in, like because they really didn't have a run game last year. Like having those guys around him help lift him up, so it's not all on his plate from an offensive perspective. And then the defensive side is just a defense that I don't think anybody thought was going to be quite as elite as they were last year. If they just grow on that and continue to make it where you, again, at the end of the day, not putting too much on Bo Nix's plate, where it's not relying on him to have to be incredible down after down. I think the defense taking a step forward as well would be huge for them.
And I think they could, dude. I think adding Janae Barron to that secondary could possibly make this the best secondary in the NFL with Pat Surtain coming off Defensive Player of the Year. Definitely one of the best secondaries in the league. And like you said, it's a defense that took a huge step last year. If they can continue on that and at least hold steady, because defense can be kind of volatile year to year. But I think if they hold steady based on last year, dude, I think they could be back in the playoffs without question.
Yeah, and not to mention the two 49ers guys they stole
Yeah.
in Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw. So on paper now, the defense looks pretty disgusting, to be honest. Like, that is a team you do not want to play. So, all right, what is the worst case scenario for the Broncos?
I think it surrounds Bo Nix, man. Like, if he takes a step back, which at the end of the day, Dakota, he was the sixth quarterback taken in that draft class. Does it mean anything? No, but at the end of the day, 5 teams thought there was somebody better in the draft than Bo Nix. He wasn't a guy that people expected to go in the first round last year. So if you're just basing it on priors, like prior to the NFL, I could see him taking a step back. However, in his rookie year, he was really, really good. Now, I don't think he was as good as the numbers say. Like, his stats are one of the best rookie QB stats out there. Like, some Broncos fans even argue that he had comparable stats to Jaden Daniels. And it's like, well, he wasn't anywhere close to Jaden. It's not that I think that that's a likely scenario, but it's definitely a scenario for Bo Nix to take a step back in year 2.
Yeah, and it's tough, with some of the teams like this one where like the best and worst are going to be very much the inverse of one another. And I think it is that, because I don't see the scenario where this defense is suddenly just not good. But I think honestly, the worst case scenario for me is probably everything we said is true except for the Bo Nix part. So the defense looks even better. The receiving core and everybody looks good, but Bo Nix is regressing and being the thing holding it back. Because then you're going to end up with a mid-tier pick, and you're kind of stuck. Then you have a season of him not looking great, a season of him looking great, and you kind of get stuck in that purgatory of what do we do? That's the last place you want to be.
That's really true, because then it's like, okay, how much more can we do for him? Are they missing a truly elite X receiver? Maybe, but that's really hard to find. It's not like those grow on trees. Even in drafts, like, this past draft, people didn't think that really existed. It was like Travis Hunter, and then maybe Ted McMillan can be that. So the point is, it's really hard to find. So how much more can you do for Bo Nix? It's like, if you built this incredible defense up around him, you have a really solid foundation. Like, one of the overall most solid rosters in the league with some star power, and Pat Surtain and Nick Benito, I would say he's an emerging star. So yeah, I think that is probably worst case scenario, because like, I just don't see this team picking in the top 10, right? Like, I just don't see that as a scenario for them, because I think their roster's too good. So yeah, the worst case scenario is like, you have a mid-tier pick and Bo Nix is like making you think, oh, maybe some weeks he's good, some weeks he's not, he's pretty inconsistent. So yeah.
I think the uncertainty would be the worst thing. Either you're certain he's fantastic, or, and to be honest, I don't even know if there's a scenario where you leave thinking he's certain he's not the guy. That would be just complete and utter destruction at that point. But
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, basically everything rides on Bo Nix and in his second season. So that is the Broncos. So now what would be best case scenario for the Los Angeles Chargers?
So I think this is probably the first team that I actually think can make a Super Bowl. I think the Chargers have that in them. The problem is, I don't think they really helped Herbert during the offseason. I think they kind of hurt him in the draft, but at the end of the day, I think Herbert has top 5 QB in him. Like, he's shown that. He has not shown it in the postseason, which is kind of part of the worst case scenario, but he has shown during the regular season that he is in that argument of that Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen range. Now, he's not really been able to jump any of those guys, in my opinion. But I think it's possible, right? You get year 2 of Vlad McConkey. You add Trey Harris to the mix, see what he can do from Ole Miss. I think that it's very possible that Herbert finally shows his talent. Like his talent shows in the playoffs and they go on a run. They have a really tough division. We just got done talking about the Broncos and we're about to talk about the Chiefs. So it's going to be tough in the AFC, but I think it's absolutely possible, dude, for them to make a run at a Super Bowl, very least AFC championship, because they have Justin Herbert, and Justin Herbert's one of the best QBs in the league.
Yeah, again, another QB one. I think my best case for them would be the weapons show up finally, because I think that's been part of what's held Justin Herbert back is that he's not really had. I mean, they brought back Mike Williams, which is funny, who was supposed to be that. Obviously, drafted a good bit before Herbert, but if Lad McConkey in year two can become, a top caliber wide receiver who showed a lot of flashes as a rookie, and then if Trey Harris hits the ground running, I think seeing an offense come together around Herbert will unlock and make him be that great potential that we know is there. So in a weird way, and I don't want to like excuse it for Justin Herbert, but like I do feel like it's more dependent on the things around him to help finally let him be that. And so yeah, I think that would be it for me. And Marion Hampton, they did spend the first round pick on him, which we obviously have discussed that a good bit, but if he hits the ground and looks like a top five, top 10 running back immediately and changes the game for them. And again, I think what Harbaugh is, the offense this past season looks so different for Justin Herbert than in the past seasons where they want to run the ball, but they just weren't great at it. And mainly because Dobbins kept, he got hurt when he was out there. He actually played really well. But if Marion Hampton can also alleviate some of that pressure from them and they can have a really good run game, then not having to ask Herbert to do a ton and he has weapons, I think could go a long way.
Yeah, that's a great point because I mean that's what this offense wants to do, man. They want to control the ball and run the ball and only make Herbert make special plays when they absolutely need him to. I mean, it's that Greg Roman system, and they want to be able to run the ball. So if they did find that in Amari and Hampton, then that could change the game for them absolutely, and help take their offense to the next level. Now, the thing is with their best case, it's tough because like listen, I think Amari Hampton could be that guy and it could take the run game to the next level, but they have really neglected trying to get Justin Herbert an elite wide receiver. Like they took Joe Alt over Malik Neighbors, which listen, not a bad pick. Joe Alt's been phenomenal. You really couldn't make a bad decision there. But then this past draft, I thought was an opportunity to try to take a shot on a wide receiver that could have really changed their offense, and they chose not to. But like you said, if that run game comes together, and I think they have a solid enough defense, right? It's not an elite defense, but it's a solid enough defense. If the run game comes together, can alleviate the pressure on Herbert, I think they can make a run. Now it's really tough because they're in the AFC. Like all these teams in the AFC, it's going to be like, well, how do you get over Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and in the division, right? They have to try to win this division, which they haven't been able to do, and that's kind of the problem. So it's going to take some things happening, but I think Herbert is a good enough foundation, and Harbaugh as well, good enough foundation for the Chargers to make a run.
And I agree with that. I definitely think winning this division is part of that outcome. I think the Chiefs, we'll get to them in a second. I have some questions now, and maybe the weakest they've looked in a minute on paper. So that the opportunity to win the division is there and definitely within the range of likely outcomes if the Chargers put it all together. All right, what about worst case for the Chargers?
Yeah, I mean, worst case is that neglecting this wide receiver position and trying to put weapons around Herbert comes back to bite them. I think in the draft, man, I think they wanted to draft one of those tight ends. That's just a hunch I have. Because if you remember when they took Hampton, dude, they used all the clock. They were trying to trade back. Like they did not look happy with the selection. This is a very analytically driven front office that they have. So I don't think they really wanted to take a running back with that first pick, especially after signing Najee in the offseason. It was a little bit puzzling. But and so I think those are the things that could come back to bite. Like, Herbert hasn't been great in the playoffs, and when they've had to rely on him, he hasn't looked great. So if that continues, I think that's part of this worst case scenario is they get back to the playoffs and Herbert puts up a stinker and that's likely when like the running back can help you, but it's just not going to help as much as an elite wide receiver.
Yeah.
And they didn't go after that in this past draft.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. The other thing I would throw in is the defense isn't good. They lost Joey Bosa, and like specifically the secondary on paper is pretty concerning looking right now. You've got Derwin James, which fantastic, but health, you can almost guarantee he's going to miss a game or two here or there. Their other starting DBs are Alohi Gilman, Cam Hart, and Tarheeb Still. It's not a great group of secondary. So I could, one of the scenarios I would see is that the secondary is an absolute liability. And then that holds them back from being able to achieve where their defense is struggling. And maybe the offense is putting it together, but the defense is now not holding up their end of the bargain after some turnover on that side of the depth chart.
I could definitely see that, especially in their division. Also, I think part of the worst case is Amari Hampton doesn't look like a game changer. Like when you take a running back in the first round, he needs to be a game changing running back, especially in a run heavy system. Like this is an extremely run heavy system that they're going to rely on the running back. And if it's clear Amari Hampton isn't a guy that's going to change this offense, and Najee ends up looking better, then I don't think Charger fans are going to be very happy with that. And again, it's another team that I think the baseline is so high because of the QB. It's less so like the Broncos. The Broncos more like, okay, the entire roster. The Chargers are, it's like how do you miss the playoffs with Herbert and Harbaugh? I just don't see that happening. So again, it's to me the worst case. You make the playoffs and you get bounced round one. That to me is the worst case for this team.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the Hampton thing's a good shot because you already, we're obviously on that boat of not being huge fans of running backs in the first, specifically who and where they took him, and he would have no excuse with the offensive line either because the Chargers do have a good offensive line, so that would be a rough look. Yeah. All right, let's go with the Chiefs now. So, what is best case scenario for the defending AFC champion Kansas City Chiefs?
Obviously, with Mahomes and Andy Reid, the best case scenario every year is a Lombardi trophy without question. It's that simple. Like you made it there last year, despite everything not looking as good. Like the defense wasn't as good as it was a year ago. The offense was probably, arguably the worst it's looked under the Mahomes and Andy Reid era. Yet they kept finding ways to win last season and found themselves back in a Super Bowl, because they have Mahomes and they have Andy Reid, but they got annihilated in the Super Bowl. But that's that. That's one game. If you play that game 10 times, it probably goes the Chiefs' way 5 times. It's like one of those things. It's a coin flip. So yeah, man. Their best case scenario is easily they win a Super Bowl again. To me, I'm looking at again a group of wide receivers that's intriguing. Like a lot of these guys look like they have extremely high potential. There's been off-field questions about a couple of them. That's kind of the thing that's held them back. But Rashid Rice and Xavier Worthy have both shown great potential, and I think can fit really well together. I believe they re-signed Hollywood Brown. Is that correct, Dakota? Did they get him back on the roster?
Yeah, he's still on the roster.
So that's a good core of wide receivers, I think, with kind of a sneaky good one, because it's like they don't have a superstar in there, but I think they have a couple of guys that could emerge as a star, and I think that's a part of their best case scenario. You get all those legal troubles taken care of, specifically Rashid Rice. He still hasn't had that taken care of. And B, one of those, I think Rice or Xavier Worthy break out, and they show that they are an elite wide receiver, maybe top 15 wide receiver in the league. I think that's within the best case scenario for them, and would definitely help out the offense that has struggled the last few years.
Yeah, I definitely think, completely agree with that. And add Jalen Royals into that as well that they drafted.
Yep.
He could be a breakout guy as a rookie. But I think best case obviously for them is winning a Super Bowl. And I think it would be getting back to an explosive offense, because like to your point, they've lacked that the past couple seasons. Like they really have been kind of winning off of defense and what, Spags does over on that side of the ball. If the offense could get back to being explosive, I think doing that and, obviously AFC Championship games almost a minimum for them at this point, and winning a Super Bowl would make you feel really good leaving this season and going forward again. So, what about worst case for the Chiefs?
Where it's hard to say they're worse because, like you said, they're based on his AFC Championship at this point. So I do think that's probably the worst case is they make it to the AFC Championship and they lose a heartbreaker to the Bills or Ravens, which as a general NFL fan, it does feel like those teams kind of deserve one at this point after all those
Yeah.
close games, man. I want to see somebody else, not gonna lie, Chiefs fans, but yeah, that's the worst case scenario for the Chiefs because they have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, and that will always be their worst case scenario. It's a lot like Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. Like their worst case scenario every year, Dakota, was pretty much AFC Championship
Oh
game.
yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
sometimes they'd get bounced by Peyton, and sometimes they wouldn't. But that was basically their worst case scenario. So that's kind of like that for the Chiefs. But kind of elaborating more on how that happens, I think again we see this offense be as bad as it's been the last couple of years, man. It's not been good. Like if you just look at Mahomes' regular season production over the last 2 years, Dakota, he's like fringe top 8 quarterback. And now nobody's going to rank him like that because you have to include the postseason, and he definitely elevates his play during the postseason. But I don't think they can continue to get by on that. Like there's a scenario, in my opinion, with how good this division has gotten, where I mean I just talked about the Chargers, where the Chiefs keep trying to play these close games and win by a field goal here, win by a blocked field goal here, that they end up losing the division because some of those games flip the other way, and then the Chargers or the Broncos take this division. I actually think that's 100% within the range of outcomes, just based on how the Chiefs have been winning the last couple of years.
Yeah, they've been kind of defying the odds in the close games, category. I agree. I think worst case is the offensive line specifically is terrible again, or at least just not good. And they lost Joe Tooney, and they got Sumataya coming in, and then they drafted Josh Simmons. If the offensive line is not good, we've kind of seen that Mahomes behind, specifically with the bad left tackle, who would now be a rookie. I think that's in the range of just seeing the offensive line struggle and the offense be bad. And then what I would throw in as a worst case is that Mahomes just has another season like the last two, because we saw absolute perfection from this guy for like 5 straight seasons when he came on the scene. And the past two have been a little underwhelming. Like even after Tyreek left, he still had a very good season that first season without him. But the last two, to your point, like statistical output wise, he's just been kind of there. Um, we still put him at the top list because he is Patrick Mahomes. But like, I think there is a worst case where like, did he already peak really badly? And like, we now this is his what he is, and that pure domination may not quite be there as much, and we've kind of gotten the most out of him already. I don't see that being super likely, but that would be, I think, in the range of worst case for him and the Chiefs.
Agreed.
All right. Let's move on to the Las Vegas Raiders to close out the AFC West. What is the best case scenario for the Raiders?
Best case scenario for the Raiders is tough. I think they could definitely be more competitive than people think they could be. I mean, I think Pete Carroll and Geno Smith will raise the floor of this team pretty heavily. And then, of course, you bring in Ashton Genty and we'll see what he can do. I think just specifically their best case is Ashton Genty hits the ground running, right? He looks incredible right off the bat. He looks like the blue chip prospect that we thought he was going to be. Um, and that, Geno and Pete Carroll kind of take off where they left off in Seattle, right? And they continue to just be good. Like they're good. Are they great? No, they're not great. Are they going to be competing for this division? No, I don't think that's realistic. But it's just going to be a much more competitive football team. It's going to be I think a lot funner football team to watch as well, with a lot of the weapons they've added and things like that. I think part of their best case is as well as one of these young weapons emerge as the guy out of the guys they drafted and the guys they already had on roster. Like one of those guys just emerge as a really good wide receiver. So I don't think they can win the division. Do I think they can make the playoffs in the AFC? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, maybe. It's going to take a lot of things happening. But it's going to be a much more competitive football team that I think Raiders fans will enjoy watching.
I agree with that. Again, Can they make the playoffs? Well, could that happen? Like we didn't think the Commanders would, sure, but like in terms of the outcomes most likely, I think leaving this season saying we're competitive would make most Raiders fans happy at this point too. You
Yep.
know, like all the guys you mentioned, all those rookies, everything they've done to kind of do the not full tear it down rebuild, the kind of wanting to continue winning, like competing rebuild, the competitive rebuild works. And Genty does look like he was worth the sixth overall pick. And the other guys you drafted offensively and defensively, you know, a ton of guys on offense all hit the ground running, which Dante Thornton is actually projected to be a starter right now, which is
It's
interesting.
awesome.
So I think so. And then yeah, you know, maybe sneak in as a wild card potentially as a 7 seed, but I mean if you win 7-8 games this season and things look good while doing it, I think that is a huge step forward because the roster, and I think most would say this, it's not designed to win right now. You're like looking at 2026 for the most part. So best case for me is you leave 25 thinking, okay, yeah, 2026 we're going to be a team fighting for the playoffs.
I do think they're a year away, but if they, like you said, if they show that progression, I think like you said, the very next year they could be a playoff contender. It's just really tough because they arguably play in the best division in football right now. It's definitely up there for debate. It's just gonna be a really hard division to compete for, and you have 6 really tough games on your schedule every year now
Oh
with
yeah.
how good this division is. So, but yeah, I think they're looking more towards 2026. But if they show, like you said, the Geno thing is working, Pete Carroll changes the culture, because that's been a big problem with the Raiders over the last, especially since
True.
McDaniels. It's like that's been a big problem is the culture. Like if Pete Carroll can show that he's going to change his culture and things like that, I think that is probably best case for them.
We got breaking news here, which is just funny because we just did the Chargers, but Najee Harris sustained an eye injury after a fireworks mishap.
So
He is
they
expected to be
need
ready for
Amari
the season,
Hampton.
but that sounds pretty brutal. So
Yeah,
maybe a one-eyed running back
gosh.
out there, but
Oh, dude, people got to chill with the fireworks, man.
oh my gosh, how many injuries we've had? Yeah, that's ridiculous. All right, what about
Yeah.
worst case scenario for the Raiders?
I think worst case. See, this is another team like we were talking pre-pod, and then when we started the pod, Dakota, that is it really a bad case scenario if they are drafting in the top 5? Because they haven't even been
Right.
doing that the last few years. Like they've been in QB purgatory because they've been like just good enough to draft in like the top 12. And they're outside of that QB range. So I don't even know if like being really bad is their worst case scenario. I think it would kind of bum Raiders fans out because that means probably the Pete Carroll and Geno stuff just didn't work. But again, if that puts you in a position to get a quarterback, then it's not so bad. So I think their worst case scenario is okay, it's clear the Geno and Pete Carroll stuff isn't working. Like the team just doesn't look better, but you're also not in the position to go draft your quarterback, your next guy.
I completely 100% agree. Like, basically, Pete Carroll's washed. And the experiment of getting him in here to basically do what you said, right? Fix the culture. He's not your long term coach. Like, we know that. His age, it's obviously not what he's going to be doing 5 years from now. I think this was a play to get a guy in to fix the culture, get these players coached up to a point when the next guy takes over, you're in a position to start competing. And if immediately you see that's not going to work, then this entire experiment kind of failed. And then you did do a competitive rebuild to then just need to fully rebuild still. And that would be pretty rough. And I would also throw in, Genty just struggles as the
Yeah,
6th overall pick, and it looks rough drafting a running back that high and he doesn't add anything.
that's a really good
Or to be
point.
honest, it may even be worse if like he does look good, but it's obvious the offensive line is an issue, and you're like, we can't max up. He looks like Saquon with the Giants,
Oh,
right? And it's like
it'd
we
be brutal.
can't get anything out of him because we didn't build a roster properly before getting this guy. So and then to your
Yeah.
point, you're sitting there with the 7th overall pick, and you oh,
Can you hear me?
are we back? I think we're back. There we go. Oh,
Are we
man.
back? Okay, we are back. Can you hear me, Dakota?
Technical difficulties. Yeah, I can.
Okay, we lost each other for a second. Have no clue what happened, but we are back. But
Woo.
yeah, I mean, I was just saying how Yeah, I mean the Raiders. Part of the Raiders' worst case is definitely Genty not working out because they want him to be the face of the franchise. They want him to be that game changer. And if you draft a running back in the top 10, that's the expectation. They just don't go in the top 10 a lot. I mean, like this is kind of off topic, but it kind of relates. Like Bijan for the Falcons right now. A lot of people are
Mm.
disappointed in Bijan, even though he's been a really, really good player, but he still hasn't lived up to the top 10 running back expectation. So, yeah, I think Genty having a bad season would be part of their worst case.
Definitely. All right, so that is AFC West. Let's move south and start with the Indianapolis Colts. What
My
is
squad.
the best case scenario for the Colts?
Oh, man. What do I really think is the best case scenario? Because truly, what the best case scenario would be is AR doesn't suck. But do I think that's within the range of outcomes at this point? Listen, dude, he's already there. He's already hurt in minicamp, right? He got hurt in minicamp. He's making rap videos. Like, is that really a part of the Colts, like, best case scenario at this point? Is AR really a part of that? I personally, as a Colts fan, don't think it is. Like, yeah, so I think truly what the best case scenario is Danny Dimes wins the job. He wins the job outright because he's looked good enough in camp to do so. And he has kind of like a career resurgence, right? Like a guy who was always put in a terrible situation in New York, dude. He never had a good situation in New York his entire time there. They finally got him a receiver his last year when he was already on the way out, and he ends up getting hurt that year anyway. So he was never put in a good spot. He got that big contract because he made the playoffs one time, blah, blah, blah. But I think with Shane Steichen and with this solid baseline of a roster, not a ton of stars, but it's a good roster, I think Danny Dimes could be elevated and he could end up being a solid, serviceable quarterback. I think Daniel Jones, if he takes a step, could lead the Colts to the playoffs. Are they making a run at the Super Bowl? No, that's ridiculous. It's Daniel Jones. He's not beating Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. That's insane. But I do think that's their best case scenario, that Daniel Jones takes a step and that this solid roster finally gets over the hump and makes the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, obviously, AR becoming really good would be fantastic, right? Like
Yeah.
that would be great for every fan, but it just he's inexperienced, so it's still there, but like the guy can't even stay healthy, so it just doesn't look like that's really that plausible at this point.
And is he
And I
focused on
agree.
football?
Yeah, I mean he's right exactly. Like he's already kind of given up. So I think Danny Dimes being the next kind of reclamation project, like you said, being the next kind of Baker, Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, and just looking good in a functioning offense with, you know, a good amount of talent around him and a solid offensive line. I think that would be the best case is then and making a playoff push. The other side of that, not as likely, but what I honestly think would be best case for the Colts, and you may even be one of the fans that would agree with this,
Yeah.
is Danny Dimes and
Top
AR
five.
both
Suck.
suck,
Yeah,
and you
draft
all are
top five.
picking top two,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's probably in the range of best case for some fans, especially when
Sure.
you were checked out and seeing Danny Dimes on the roster just irritates you.
If you're truly a realistic Colts fan, you know that QB. I mean, if you're well, let me say, if you're a astute, realistic Colts fan, then you have to understand that QB purgatory is not where you want to be, and our
No.
roster's in a spot where that's very possible. I mean, that's been the case,
Yep.
right? That's
Yep.
been what's happening actively. You're in that Steelers, which we'll get to them later, but you're in that Steelers case where it's like, okay, you got a good team, you can compete, but you don't have the guy. The only way you get that guy is you draft high. That's the only way, or you give up a absolute haul to go up, which is just it's not realistic when you're picking in the teens. It's just not to go up to get the guy. So yeah, I think that is definitely one of the best case scenarios where AR Daniel Jones just stink it up and they're terrible and they lead the Colts to a top 5 pick.
Yep. And he kind of touched on worst case there a little bit. I would say the other best side maybe is that the defense is so good that it kind of carries the offense a bit to get you to the postseason, so you at least feel confident going forward. But But yeah, and to kind of touched on worst case there, honestly, is kind of just a continued trend of things, right? Like, Daniel Jones and AR both don't look great, but you still win 7 to 8 games and you're picking at 14 again. And it's just, what do we do?
Yeah,
Do we trade? Do we go? What do you do? Right? Like that. And I think that's honestly a lot of the ones we talked about, like the uncertainty of leaving a season where you're just kind of like, how do we address things going forward is a really tough place to be in.
true. A couple players I'll throw into the best and worst case scenarios. A couple guys I'm looking at on the roster is Latu. Like he needs to
True.
develop. Was the first defensive player off the board last year. Was a extremely productive college player. Had a really good projection going into the league. He disappointed year one. He wasn't terrible. Like he wasn't awful. He was definitely serviceable, but that's not what you really want out of him. You want an elite pass rusher. And I still think that is within his best case scenario. But his worst case scenario is he continues down the path as a rookie that he was as a rookie, and he just is just an average player that's a part of this rotation. This team needs an elite pass rusher, and then another guy is Adonai Mitchell. I think Adonai Mitchell showed a lot of potential as a rookie. Like he showed that he has what it takes to get open, which is, as you know,
Yeah.
Dakota, is the toughest part of being a receiver in the league is getting open. Now he was not on the same page with any quarterback he played with. When he was open, they missed him, or when he was open and they hit him, he would drop it. Like he had a lot of issues his rookie year. But to me, if he can just get a couple of things together, he has a ton of potential and can make a huge difference in this offense. So again, best case would be he does that. Worst case would be he continues to not be on the same page with the quarterback, and he ends up just being kind of a wasted second round pick.
Yeah, I think that's a really good ad for the worst is like they have the solid roster right now. But if Latu, AD Mitchell, and then maybe even if Tyler Warren just looks
Yeah,
like he
yeah, for
doesn't
sure.
belong in the NFL, and all these young guys you've drafted to help build this roster to sustain the fact that you have that baseline, to be honest, that's probably a worse scenario. Because then if you finally do get to the position where you can get a quarterback, you now
You
don't
need
have
those
a roster you
guys.
feel as exactly. You
True.
don't have a roster you feel as confident in. So that would
It's a
be
tough spot
not
because
ideal.
like if those guys do develop, that's kind of a tough spot to culture in, right? Because if a lot of those guys do develop, like AD Mitchell and Tyler Warren is good right away, and Law 2 shows he can be elite pass rusher, then there's no way you're picking in the top five. So then you need
Nope.
the quarterback to be good. So it's a tough spot, man. But yeah, we'll see. Worst case is that they continue down this QB purgatory path of picking, 12 to 16 every year, but you never have a guy that can get you over the hump.
Yeah, to be honest, they probably have one of the smaller range of outcomes, and that's probably a terrible place to be in general. Is like you're here for sure, and you're not going to be able to get out of it with the way things look. So tough times in
Lovely.
Indianapolis.
Lovely.
All right, let's do the Jacksonville Jaguars. What is best case for the Jags?
Man, the Jags. This is a team to me that maybe the first team we've talked about that has a wide range of outcomes to
Oh
me.
yeah,
This team,
yeah,
this team could take a colossal step forward, dude. Trevor Lawrence has already shown at points in his career that he can be elite. Now, has he been consistent with that? Absolutely not. He has shown that he can be really, really bad at times. But this is the best case scenario. The best case scenario is that he is elite and that he can be a top 8 quarterback. And part of that best case scenario is, my God, this wide receiver core could end up being the best in the NFL. I mean, Brian Thomas Jr. looked like the best rookie out of possibly the best wide receiver class that we've seen in 20 years. I mean, it was the deepest, the
oh
most
yeah.
top. I mean, it was just an insane class of wide receivers that we saw a year ago, and Brian Thomas Jr. looked like the best out of all of them. And then you add Travis Hunter to that mix, who is an elite wide receiver prospect in his own right, and plus you add the versatility of playing defense as well, which is insane. If he actually does that, we'll see what happens. But dude, I think the best case scenario is they have a top 3 wide receiver core in the NFL, and they have Trevor Lawrence, who has the possibility of being elite still, in my opinion. Even though it's not looking great right now, but you add a guy like Travis Hunter that can definitely help. So yeah, man, their best case scenario is winning this division. There's no question about that.
Completely agree. And they also had a Jeremy Brown, who I've been a fan of, and kind of got asked to always be a wide receiver 2 in Washington, but now can be a wide receiver 3, so he may fit in better there. They do like a little bit of depth at wide receiver after those guys, but as long as things stay fine, that won't be a problem. I think the other thing I would just add to that is that Liam Cohen steps in and would be a catalyst for a lot of that, but he helps kind of unlock Trevor Lawrence too. Like having an offensive minded coach like that helped. Baker had another good season under him. Um, if Cohen hits the ground running and helps unlock this offense, even just schematically, to make Trevor Lawrence's life easier, I think it'll be good times in Duval.
Yeah. Part of their best case scenario is his cringy introduction press conference isn't a sign of things to come.
Yeah,
In
he's just an
Jacksonville.
offensive. Yeah, he's just an offensive nerd, and he clicks and gets to them just cooking.
Part of best case I'm looking at for the Jags as well is Trayvon Walker watch, right? You use the first overall pick on Trayvon Walker. He has been from an all-around perspective, he has not lived up to that hype, right? Like the sack numbers are getting better, but from a down-to-down perspective, he has not been an elite player. He just hasn't. And when you use a first overall pick on an edge rusher, Dakota, especially in a class with Aiden Hutchinson, which went the very next pick, you expect that player to be elite. So I think part of their best case is Trayvon continues to develop, man, and do I realistically think he can become an elite pass rusher? I don't know. That's pretty tough, man, because he just hasn't shown it yet, but he has gotten better. So I think it's definitely possible that he continues to develop and at least becomes an above average pass rusher. And in that scenario, it's like, okay, you have him on the other side of Josh Allen. It's like, okay, now Josh Hines Allen, you're looking really good on the defensive line. So, and I think also part of the best case is Travis Hunter plays both sides, and he can actually do that, and it can actually play wide receiver and cornerback, so the trade up doesn't look insane. You use 2 first round picks, but you got 2 first round caliber players on both sides of the football.
Yeah, 100%. Definitely think that. Yeah, justifying the trade up and then Travis Hunter being as advertised would be. Because even outside of what else kind of happens, that at least you've got the face of your franchise locked up, like we talked about on the draft stuff. So that would be great. All right, what about worst case scenario for the Jags?
Worst case is pretty much everything we just said is the opposite, which I think is 100% possible. Like Trevor Lawrence has not looked good. Despite adding an elite wide receiver last year, he did not look good. He was part of the reason Brian Thomas didn't have better stats than he did, and he already had insane stats. So I think Trevor continuing to be inconsistent, showing like that, that high ceiling, but never just reaching it and never just having that be his baseline, would be part of the worst case. Obviously a part of a lot of the worst case, which I'm sure you'll touch on, Dakota, is Travis Hunter not living up to this potential. Which his floor is so high, man. Like at worst, he's like a good wide receiver, which is still, is that worth what they gave up? No. And that would be part of the problem, right? As part of this worst case scenario is, okay, you get a good starter on one side of the football, which would be good for anyone else, but you gave up 2 potentially top 10 picks to go get, Travis Hunter. So that would definitely be part of that worst case.
Yeah, definitely. Even if he's just kind of like good at one and okay at the other, like to justify the trade up at that point, things are looking pretty bleak. And yeah, honestly, Trevor Lawrence, right? Like he has not. I mean, because we got to remember, like he is the last person, and Caleb got this a little bit, but nowhere near the level Trevor did about being called generational. That got thrown out so much, and especially after paying him. If he just isn't that, you're going to be in a rough situation for a while. And then the other thing I would throw out is maybe the offense does click. Liam Cohen does have the offense looking good, but the defense is a liability. Trayvon doesn't progress as a pass rusher, and the secondary is okay on paper right now, and they're just kind of a liability. And you think you finally got it together, and you still don't. And I think that would be a kind of a rough scenario to leave, because then you finally got maybe you got the best season of Trevor Lawrence yet, but the defense held you back, and now you're looking at that side of the ball thinking, man, how do we put it all together?
So maybe their worst case scenario is like 2024 Bengals, right? Like where you
Oh
have
my
this
gosh.
explosive offense, you're putting up 40 points a week, but the defense is just giving up 50 and you lose every week. Like that's definitely a possibility, I think, with this offense. Because that's the kind of scenario where you'd be looking at like, okay, you're 7, 8 wins, but you don't make the playoffs. You don't even
Yep.
have a good pick, which I guess they don't even own their picks. That doesn't matter that much, but it matters a little bit for the rest of the draft and whatnot.
Right.
So yeah, that definitely. But I think the main worst case scenario for them, dude, is Trevor. Right? If Trevor
Yep.
is
Yep.
not, if he doesn't live up to the contract, if he doesn't live up to the generational hype, if he's just another guy, because you did not expect that when you drafted him number one. You didn't expect that when people compared him to John Elway and Andrew Luck and Peyton Manning. And you didn't expect that when you gave him $250 million. You just didn't. You expected more. And especially why that would be disappointing, Dakota, is because what I said in the best case, which is this could be a top 3 wide receiver core in the NFL. Like if this ends
Right.
up being a really good wide receiver core, like Travis Hunter is him, Brian Thomas continues what he did as a rookie, and Trevor still sucks. Like that is absolutely worst case scenario for Jags fans.
And because you got the contract, and you're not going to be drafting somebody to replace him anytime soon. So, all right, what about the Houston Texans? Best case scenario.
Oh, Houston Texans, man, this is tough because I think their best case is kind of where they've been the last couple of years, which is they've been winning the division, that's a good start, right? Like you want to start with winning your division. That's really important. Now they play in the worst division in football, so that definitely helps. But they at least have been winning their division even in a down year, and I think that's important, right? They won their division even in a down year from Stroud, which is really good. Um, do I think they can compete for a Super Bowl? Maybe. Like it would take Stroud taking a huge next step, and it would also take one of these young Iowa State wide receivers they just drafted coming in, hitting the ground running, looking really good right away. I think it would take Nico Collins. Like Nico Collins has already looked really elite, and has been one of the at least the top 10 wide receiver in football over the last 2 years. But I think if he took even another step and he was in that Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase realm of wide receivers, which I think is a possible scenario for them, then I think that could lead to them possibly, getting to the AFC Championship or maybe even getting over the hump.
Yeah, and I think one thing that'll be a theme, and it kind of already has so far, as we're about halfway through the AFC, is Super Bowl is a lot tougher to get to in the AFC. Like when we get to
Yep.
the NFC teams, I think we're going to say Super Bowl is going to be more likely for teams that people may be like that seems a bit more far fetched, but it's just the AFC is tough.
Yep.
So I agree. I think getting back into the play, at least winning the division, getting back into the playoffs, AFC Championship, getting there, I think would be a massive achievement.
Yep.
And specifically seeing, Stroud. And it's tough because he still played well. People will say that he did, but he had the minor regression, but also the offensive line was abysmal. And if the
It
offensive
was.
line is better, I think that will naturally create a trajectory upward again to create that best case scenario where, the offense is really good. The defense last year took a step forward, even though the offense wasn't as good. The defense started to creep towards being elite, right? And Derek Stingley Jr. looked like the 3rd overall pick, and Will Anderson, So I think best case is probably reaching the AFC Championship game, but Stroud continues to grow off of what he's done in his first 2 seasons. The offensive line specifically looks better, and maybe Laramie Tunsil actually was a locker room cancer.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
You're proven right there, yeah. And then the defense.
And Bobby was the problem as OC.
Yeah, it's Bobby. Yeah, it's all Slowick's
Bobby.
fault. Blame him. But then the defense just continues to be elite, and maybe even if some of those things on offense don't happen, the defense has just reached a point where it's almost like the Steelers, where like you can win with that, and you do still have a franchise quarterback, so your baseline is really high.
It's a really good point about the defense because the defensive side of the ball, I think their best case scenario is they have the best defense in the NFL, man. Like that's their trajectory they're heading down. Like they're starting to gather elite players on that defense. And like Will Anderson and Derek Stingley, you could already argue are elite players in the NFL. So
Yeah.
I think that is part of their best case scenario is this defense. Um, at least stays put, but if not, gets better and becomes one of the best defenses in the entire NFL. And like you said, hopefully everything last year was the problem. They fixed it, right? They trade Laramie Tunsil, they get rid of Bobby, and it's all fixed. And Stroud's back to looking like he did as a rookie or even better.
Yep. All right. What about worst case scenario for the Texans?
Well, worst case scenario is you traded away your elite left tackle.
And then the offensive line is worse.
Yeah, and you're already really bad line. You traded away your elite left tackle. So maybe the offensive line is horrible. Like this offensive line could be absolutely terrible. It really could. They're relying on rookies, like they're relying on young guys to develop, and it's that's risky. That's always really risky to do. And I think a part of that worst case scenario is with the offensive line, and maybe these weapons don't look as good as we think they could. Stroud continues to regress, or at least stays, because Stroud has already shown such a strong baseline. Like I think Stroud is never just going to be terrible. He's just not. Like he's already shown that. I think part of that worst case scenario is maybe they're competing for the division, maybe they win the division again. But again, they just don't have what it takes in the playoffs, and they get bounced in the playoffs because that bad O-line play, and maybe the defense isn't as good as we thought they were going to be.
Yeah, I agree. I think worst case, yeah. I mean, they're making the playoffs, winning the division, but doing it in a way that doesn't look good again. Like you've scraped your way and you've just won the division that is bad, and then you play the elite teams, and it's obvious that there's a gap there. And kind of what you touched on too, I would say it is, I agree with the Stroud piece. Like there is just a certain line where Stroud is at in terms of how good he is. And I don't think he'll go below that. But if the offensive line does look worse, if the Laramie Tunsil trade looks like a horrible decision, I think it could just affect CJ Stroud's development. Like a lot of that happens typically to guys earlier on in their career, like as a rookie, when you go into a bad offensive line. Like it's happened to Jets quarterbacks and Browns quarterbacks in the past, but like, honestly, kind of having a Will Levis to a degree where, like, if you just create bad habits from that, Caleb Williams had it last year.
Yep.
It can break your psyche a bit. And then if they damage their franchise quarterback's ability to play the game, not his talent, but just his ability to play and process, I think that would be a disastrous thing to leave this season with.
Yeah, I definitely think that's part of their worst case because it's possible. Like this offensive line has the possibility of being really, really bad. It's one of those things too. You're bringing in new faces. You're not just bringing in rookies, and you're going to rely on rookies at some point. It's like there's no continuity. And again, Laramie Tunsil, I get a lot of Texans fans will argue that's a good move because all the penalties and the locker room stuff, and we just said that's part of the best case. Like he was a problem, but at the end of the day, on a down-to-down basis, he's one of the best pass blocking left tackles in the entire NFL. So yeah, man, like the O-line, I think is the biggest thing with their worst case. Cause again, I think Stroud he's solid, but with a bad offensive line, like to your point, it can break a quarterback, and create bad habits. So I think that offensive line is the biggest part of their worst case.
Absolutely. All right, let's go on to the last AFC South team, the Tennessee Titans. What is best case for the Titans?
Best case is Cam Ward's the guy, man. It's that simple. Cam
Ward. Jersey
listen, man. I'm buying into the intangibles of Cam Ward right now. Cam Ward's intangibles look special. Like he looks like a guy who's dead focused on football. He loves football. I love the way he's building his teammates up, dude. Just like before he even got drafted with the Titans, hyping guys like Calvin Ridley up and Tajay Spears, like guys that he's not even, I mean, maybe he's met them, maybe he had a couple phone calls or texts with them or whatever, but it's been minimal interaction. He's already hyping those guys up. I think his intangibles are special, and his talent is there, man. It's obvious the talent's there. And like it's basically with Cam Ward, can he eliminate some of the boneheaded plays? And then all of a sudden you've got a guy that I think has the tools that can compete in the AFC. Like that is absolutely his ceiling, is a guy who can compete with Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. Now he has to show that, but again,
Right.
we're talking about best case scenario. I absolutely think that's best case scenario for the Titans. Does that mean they're going to win this year? No, I don't think the roster's in that spot. But if Cam Ward shows that special, like he's shown, like, okay, hey, if the Titans get a couple more receivers, they continue to beef up that offensive line, then boom, they can compete for the AFC in 2026.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the easiest ones in terms of like if Cam Ward looks like the number one
It's
overall
pretty
pick,
black and
nothing
white.
else almost matters. Yeah,
Yeah.
almost nothing else matters at that point. But to your point, yeah, like Titans fans, buckle up because like if we win 7 games this season, if the Titans win 7 games,
It's a good
that
result.
means we did something right because
Yeah.
the rosters. I mean, looking at the pass rush and linebackers specifically, the front seven outside of Tavondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons is abysmal. Like bottom three in the NFL level. So I just don't think that the roster is good enough to elevate this team to even compete for a playoff spot right now at all. And not saying it's completely impossible because when we looked at the Commanders depth chart going into last season, we all kind of thought the same thing. We thought the Texans were going to be drafting the Cardinals were going to have the first and second overall pick from
Yeah.
the
Exactly.
from their
It's
from when
possible.
they
I mean, what
drafted Stroud.
Jaden
Yeah,
did, it's very possible.
it is, but it's just so unlikely that I wouldn't put it in that range. And but if Cam Ward looks like the number one overall quarterback, that is obviously best case. Like if he just looks like Jaden Daniels did or CJ Stroud did, even just that level, I think is you're leaving this season feeling pretty good.
I think it's very possible too. Like I said, I've bought into his intangibles, and the tools are obviously there. That's why he went number one. I think a part of their best case too is you mentioned a couple of the guys I'm looking at. Sweat, like I think he could become an elite player. Like I think
Oh
that's in
yeah.
his
Oh
range
yeah.
of outcomes. I think he could end up being one of the best defensive tackles in the league. And then Jeffrey Simmons, I think Jeffrey Simmons has always been a guy that's kind of been like fringe elite defensive tackle,
Yeah.
right? Like he's almost in that Chris Jones range, but he hasn't gotten there. And who knows? Maybe at this point in his career, he's never going to be like that consistent guy, but I think he could be. Like he shows it on certain plays. It's like he shows the special in him. So it's like if he can just, consistently do that, I think there is another step possibly in his game. And then right there, like you said, you're really just looking at the edge rushers. You need a guy which, it's going to take time to build this roster. It's going to take time, but that's like what we're saying. It's like if a couple of these young guys and Cam Ward show that they can be special, then all of a sudden this is a team that's going to be looking to compete in 26.
Yeah, and I would add the receivers too. If the rookie receivers, if DK and A. will look good,
True.
then that would
The
be huge.
Travis
Which
Hunter
obviously
killer.
exactly. Which I mean, obviously that kind of ties into Cam looking good because it's gonna be hard for him to look really good if these guys all suck. Um, but I think that'd be great. And then I'll dive into the worst case because honestly, I've thought about this a lot, and I think I, I honestly think worst case scenario is a twofold. Obviously, it's Cam Ward looks bad. But I think it's specifically Cam Ward looks bad. Like he looks Bryce Young first season level bad. But Callahan still weirdly looks like a good coach. Like
Mm,
it's obvious that Callahan wasn't the problem. It's Cam Ward. And then you're going to be stuck in, I have to fire this coach and go through
yeah.
you then get stuck in a situation where you're like going to have to fire a coach that's not bad and then get stuck in a QB purgatory thing again or like cycling through QB with coach not at the same time. And I think that would be a brutal place to be in. And specifically with Cam Ward to trigger all Titans fans, the that the style that he plays, like you mentioned, he just has more of those bad plays than good, or just enough of them that you have PTSD moments to Will Levis, and he's just making boneheaded mistakes that kill games.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Getting triggered by the Will Levis stuff would be part of it. I think it's tough though because I don't even think their worst case scenario you will know after the season because Cam it's his
Mm.
first year. I mean, look at the Panthers. We won't be talking about them on this episode, but I mean, they thought Bryce Young was dead in the water, man,
True,
after his rookie season. I
true,
mean,
true.
and he had possibly the worst rookie season out of any rookie quarterback ever, dude. I mean, that's how bad he was. I'm pretty sure he graded in the 40s at PFF. It was awful. So you really won't know if Cam Ward's the guy yet or not, especially with the state the roster's in. So that's kind of the tough part. But I agree with you. Like if it looks like Callahan's elevating everyone else, but Cam Ward is making those Will Levis type plays, like just more meme plays like that. I think that's the worst case scenario is more
The
meme
memes.
plays, and the Titans just suck because again it'll be like Will Levis all over again. Except this time you spent the first overall pick on the guy. So that will look a little worse. But again, I think the Titans are in kind of an interesting spot where it's like you really their true worst case scenario is Cam Ward's not the guy, but we really won't know that this year.
Yeah. I would also throw in the offensive line is still atrocious.
Oh, yeah,
Moving
true.
JC to the right didn't fix anything. Dan Moore, it turns out, he isn't. I mean, he's an okay tackle, but putting him along, Skoronski doesn't develop. If the O line is just abysmal again, which will play into Cam Ward as well, then you just have a disaster in Nashville. But
That actually might be the worst case. Which of course, if Cam Ward's the guy, it's okay. But if your offensive line is like stopping Cam Ward from being special,
Yeah.
that would be rough. Like that would be really rough because, I mean, listen, Dan Moore has been average, except for when he plays Myles Garrett. He's got Myles Garrett on the schedule.
Terrible.
So it's tough. And then Skoronski is another guy. Like that's another guy to shout. It's like if Skoronski doesn't take a step forward this year, that would be definitely part of the worst case.
Yep. Yep. Tough times in Nashville as well. Potentially. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right. Halfway through the AFC, we'll move on to the AFC East now. And we'll start with the Buffalo Bills. What's best case scenario for Josh Allen and the Bills?
That's a simple one, man. They beat the Chiefs.
They beat
the Chiefs, and they win the Super Bowl. Listen, Bills fans. I if you watch the whole episode, I've said how I'm a Colts fan, but realistically, I know my team has no chance. I am going for the Buffalo Bills to win it this year. If I had to just be a fan, dude, I'm rooting for this team. This team has experienced so much heartbreak. I believe they got absolutely screwed last year in the AFC Championship. They should have been in the Super Bowl last year, in my opinion. And Josh Allen, he's a guy, Dakota. Like we both grew up watching Peyton's career, both huge Peyton fans. The narrative around Peyton was, okay, he just can't get it done in the postseason. That's not the case with Josh Allen. Josh Allen, no one even says that about Josh Allen. Everyone's like, dude, Josh Allen has been awesome in the postseason. Josh Allen has been elite in the postseason. But the team is just cursed for some reason. They just can't get over this Chiefs hump. Like, they have played well in these games. You have the 13-second game. Sorry to trigger Bills fans. And then you have last year where it's like with the QB sneak, should have been a first down. It's like all these things that's like, it should have went the Bills' way, but it just didn't. You just got unlucky. So, obviously, the best case scenario is you stop getting unlucky, you finally make the Super Bowl, and you finally hoist the Lombardi as a Buffalo Bill fan.
It's really that simple. And I would say that maybe for my best case is that the defense specifically doesn't let Josh down, because I know last season had the moment, the pass, was it Kincaid or Dawson that was thrown to? I can't remember.
Ooh,
one of the tight ends where that was
Dawson.
dropped. I think it was Dawson, but that moment obviously was on the offense, but they were in that situation from the defense letting them score and then go back to the 13-second game and everything. Like, it does feel like Josh Allen usually gets it done and other people let him down, to your point. But like, it would be nice to see best case where the defense doesn't even get, like, never comes to that. It never comes to needing to put it on anybody and they let it end. And then, if they can make it through the Chiefs and then just go and win the Super Bowl. Because to be honest, I think if they make it there, I feel pretty good about them beating anybody that comes out of the NFC. So
true, man.
It's really that simple. And I agree too. I would, as a Titans fan, I'm rooting
to see
for
the
them.
Bills win it, man.
I would.
Josh Allen has been so good. They deserve one. And like I said, he's been elite in the playoffs. But more specifically, part of their best case is one of these young receivers, again, like Keon Coleman, which Keon Coleman just did not show a ton as a rookie. He was pretty disappointing. And I think they expect him to be that X type. So, like, do I even think that's in his range of outcomes? I'm not sure. But, I think that would be part of the best case is, like, they finally get an elite weapon for Josh again since Stephon Diggs, which they really haven't had. So,
and it'll be Josh Palmer. Reclamation project, Josh
go.
Palmer. He'll get it done. All right, what about worst case scenario?
Another heartbreaker, man. That's the worst case.
Same thing, man.
It's
just
simple.
the same thing happens.
Same thing, dude. I would be gutted.
Oh,
it's like that meme, the worst battles meme or whatever, where it's like the guy's like beaten and bruised. It's like, dude, it's just that's it, man. Like, I mean, how have you already gotten through it as a Bills fan? Because listen, I think it's much tougher. I mean, I kind of experienced this with Peyton for a long time, dude. I think it's much tougher when your team is competitive and you know you should be winning it or at least be there in the Super Bowl and you're not. Like I think that's even tougher than like kind of like the Colts are in right now, where it's like, dude, you don't even have a chance and you know that going into the year. The Bills should be winning it. The Bills should already have a Super Bowl, if not multiple. Okay, so yeah, the worst case scenario was like more Chiefs black magic, and Mahomes finds a way to get it done once again, or maybe it's Lamar this time that bounces the Bills, or maybe Joe Burrow gets back to the playoffs and bounces them. It's like it's a really hard conference to win. And yeah, another heartbreaker in the AFC Championship. Worst case scenario.
I honestly completely agree with that. Like, I don't even think missing the playoffs entirely is worst case, which is not super
That's
likely in the range
yeah,
of outcomes anyway.
it's not.
It is literally not even losing in the wild card. It is another AFC Championship loss, and more
Yeah.
likely than in a heartbreaking fashion again. And I will be gutted for you, Bills fans. So
Yes. Or maybe even worst case scenario is they make the Super Bowl, they get over the Chiefs hump, and then they doing a kick off the field goal post against the Lions or something. That would be
oh
brutal
my
as well.
gosh,
But
that would be
yeah,
brutal.
either heartbreaking AFC Championship or heartbreaking Super Bowl loss.
Is in the future, most likely. No,
God, don't say that.
no,
Don't
no.
say
We
that.
won't put that juju out there. All right. Miami Dolphins. Best case scenario for the Dolphins.
Ugh. Don't have a lot of good things to say about the Dolphins for best case, dude. I'll be completely honest. Like it's tough because I don't even know if they ever had a window, man, with Tua. I think best case for them is Tua progresses more. The offense kind of gets back on track of where it was before. They kind of start to show that they have elite potential as an offense once again. Maybe the offensive line gets better. I don't know if that's possible, but maybe. And maybe Kenneth Grant's elite. Maybe that's part of their best case. Maybe Kenneth Grant, which I think that is actually possible. I'm being a little facetious, but I think Kenneth Grant actually could change this defensive line and could be an elite game record for them. So I think that's part of their best case scenario. Do I think they can make the playoffs? Oh, man, that's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to make the playoffs in the AFC. We just got done talking about that. But I think they could squeak in, honestly. I think if the offense gets back to what it was before, Tyreek, stays on the field, stays healthy, I think they could squeak into the playoffs. Do I think they can win a playoff game? I don't, man. I don't. Especially like we just saw it a couple years ago, Dakota, when they went to Kansas City and it's cold. Like, I just don't know if their finesse style wins in the playoffs. I just don't think they have over the last couple of years. So yeah, unfortunately, that's probably best case, like a first round playoff exit.
I want to shout out the Spaniard in chat for he said it, not us. Best source for NFL content on the internet.
He said
Some
it.
are saying it. Some have said it.
At least
Some have
one
said
person has said that
At least one person
in a
has said
YouTube
it, so,
chat.
In a YouTube chat. Yeah. Honestly, the Dolphins are probably one of the ones where I've sat there thinking, I don't know what best case is, because I don't see a scenario that puts them in a position to know what their future holds and to be able to act on it, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you know two is not the answer and you can do something about it, I don't think that's going to happen. So yeah, unfortunately, I kind of agree. I think best case scenario is you at least the offense is cooking again, and looks better than it did last year, and the offensive line is somehow functional, and you can make it into the playoffs, but more than likely lose because the roster's just not there to be able to elevate. And unfortunately, Tua has just not shown the ability to go toe to toe with
Yeah.
Josh Allen and the Joe Burrows and the Lamars and the Mahomes that are in the AFC. And, we've talked about a lot with a lot of these teams. You're in, unfortunately, the toughest conference by far, in my opinion. Like, the top four quarterbacks in the NFL are all in this conference. So
Probably the top five.
maybe top five. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's that's tough. So I think that's probably, and maybe best case is at least seeing, to your point, some progression and or breakouts from other guys. Some other people to pop out and be stars a little bit. Um, maybe Bradley Chubb,
Maybe.
Jalen Phillips staying healthy and looking
Yeah.
like when
Because
he's played, man, he
he's
has been
shown that
good.
potential. Yep.
Yeah. So if he
I
could
think
just
that's
stay
part of
healthy
their.
and
Mhm.
exactly and put it together with Bradley Chubb and Kenneth Grant, have just an elite defensive front, I think would
True.
be in that range.
That's true. That's honestly, I think elite is possible for their defensive line. With Jalen Phillips staying healthy, maybe best case is Quinn Ewers becomes the next Cinderella late round
Ooh,
pick,
Brock Purdy.
develops. Yeah, the next Brock Purdy, the next. Oh, I won't even say Tom Brady, but next one of those guys
Oh
who
gosh, he's
is a late
compared
round.
Quinn Ewers to Tom. It's happened. Clip it.
Maybe that's best case scenario, man.
I like that.
You know,
If he does look
who
like,
knows?
if Tua gets hurt, which is, I mean,
Which,
it's not, we've not talked injuries because I want to
yeah,
avoid that, but like Tua's going
that's
to get hurt
very
more than
yeah.
likely.
That's in this.
And
It
to your
has to
point,
be in the discussion with the
either
Dolphins.
to your point though, either Quinn looks great as a rookie or Zach Wilson reclamation project with
That's
Mike
true.
McDaniel with a
That's true.
functional head coach and scheme for him to be in would be an interesting one. So
That's a very good point. Didn't think about the Zach Wilson reclamation project.
no one does.
Yeah, literally nobody.
What about worst case for the Dolphins?
Worst case is basically everything we just kind of talked about in the best case, which is this.
Yeah.
I mean, this roster just, it never felt like it could compete to begin with. Like it always felt like, okay, when they faced the best teams, they were going to lose eventually. Plus, like Tua is a guy that is solid, but has the, like, we haven't talked about injuries, but like you have to talk about
Yes.
injuries with Tua because of the concussions. Like part of the worst case is Tua continues to have these concussion issues that he's had, which is very unfortunate. You hate to see that, man, but it's something that just doesn't go away, right? Like that's the kind of thing. It's a snowball. The concussion thing is a snowball effect, and Tua doesn't particularly seem to care to help it either. Like some of the hits he takes and things
Yeah.
like that, he just doesn't. He doesn't do a very good job of avoiding those situations. So that again, that's part of the worst case. Tua gets hurt, and the Dolphins are just terrible. Like maybe part of the worst case is Tyreek is, he seems hot and cold. Like one day he wants to leave, the next day he wants to be there. Maybe he lands on before the season he doesn't want to be there, so they have to move on from Tyreek. I think that's part of the worst case. And then this offensive line. I mean, this offensive line has been one of the worst units in the league over the last few years. If that, and they just lost their potential Hall of Fame left tackle to retirement. So, Teron Armstead retires in the offseason. So it's like, can you realistically believe the line's gonna get better? Like after losing your best tackle. So I think worst case is the line's terrible, Tua gets hurt, and the Dolphins suck.
And unfortunately, those two kind of go hand in hand. The offensive line being terrible may just breed that injury for Tua, unfortunately. And then I think that's probably the worst case is if something else happens to Tua, because obviously the human element there would be tough to deal with. But you then go into the offseason with genuine questions around, they're picking seventh, eighth overall, but Tua's health, you're now sitting there thinking, can we rely on him being our starting quarterback going forward? Should he, in good conscience, continue playing football? And you have to sit down and have those conversations. But yeah, that and the defense is also just abysmal. The secondary specifically, which is very likely, they got Minka back, but
Traded
that's
Jalen
about
for
it.
him. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
that's about it. So we'll see. We'll see.
maybe Nate V's comment saying Dolphins get Arch in 2027. Maybe that's their best case scenario. Possibly.
I mean, I'm sure a lot of, the Dolphins fans would be 50-50 on that. Probably there's still the ones that are like, Tua's going to win us a Super Bowl. And then all the
Sure.
ones that hate Tua are probably like, sign me up. I will gladly suck for the next 2 seasons
Yeah.
if they can get Arch.
Yeah. We'll see.
But again,
We'll see how
that
that
comes
plays
back to
out.
best case for some fans.
Yeah. Hey, dude, some fans know their team, right? They know the limitations of their team. And I mean, we're trying to bring that to the table. Like we're not going to sit here and lie and say the Dolphins can make a Super Bowl. They cannot. That is not in their range of outcomes this year. It's just not.
It's just kind of explicitly stated, you're
Yeah,
not doing it.
they're not.
Sorry.
Sorry, Dolphins fans. It's
Sorry.
not happening. And clip this when it happens. It's not gonna happen.
Oh man. All right. Well, let's move on to an interesting team, the New York Jets. What is best case scenario for the Jets?
I think this is a team that's heading in the right direction. I think there's listen that Jets fans know that this is a rebuild. Like this is a rebuild. It's not a team looking to compete next year. They have a bridge quarterback in Justin Fields, but I think they're building this roster up in the right way. They're starting in the trenches, man. Starting with bookend tackles with Mimbu and Olufashinu. It's like those guys can change the offense. Like this, I think in a couple of years we could be saying the Jets offensive line is top 5 in the league. I think that's a possibility. So that's part of their best case. Like Mimbu hits the ground running, Fashanu develops even more. And because he was good as a rookie, he didn't play a ton, but he was good when he did play. He can be an elite pass blocker. So I think that's part of their best case is this offensive line is looking really good. I think ultimately the best case for the Jets, dude, is the foundation looks good for the next guy. Like the foundation looks good. Kind of like the Giants. They're actually very similar. It's like, even though the Giants just drafted Dart, but it's very similar. It's like, if the foundation is good going forward, then that's a really good start for potentially the next QB.
Yeah, I would say obviously you would love to say Justin Fields becomes the guy, but it just doesn't seem super likely at this point. If he could become a reclamation project, I don't think that's quarterbacks usually don't go to the Jets for that to happen. It's usually what leads you going somewhere else. So
yeah, exactly.
Doesn't look
Usually
great
become
historically.
reclamation from the Jets.
Exactly. Look at exactly Zach Wilson. We just talked about Sam Darnold. So, but yeah, I agree with it. I think for some reason the team just didn't look very good last year. We were all going into the season thinking, they were overhyped. They were. The Jets were overhyped, but we were like, this roster is good for the most part, and we've got Aaron Rodgers, and then they just didn't do anything. So I think overall you're right. Like the roster around Fields looks good, the foundation looks good, and I would also throw in Aaron Glenn looks like a good head coach, and then you do feel good about the next quarterback that okay, this guy can be in. Because it's going to be tough for them to ever end up in a situation to draft that guy or whatever ends up happening to get that next quarterback. But I think feeling good about your head coach and your roster feeling like, okay, we weren't crazy. We do have a good, solid foundation here that if we do find that quarterback, we can take that next step.
Aaron Glenn is a really good shout because can it be a lot like the Dan Campbell situation in Detroit? Even when Dan Campbell came in and they were winning 4 games, it felt like the culture was changing in Detroit, man. It felt like things were going to be different because of Dan Campbell. And like, of course, Aaron Glenn comes directly from that tree. So can he be a part of that? Like just that same cloth where it's like, okay, we're not competitive in 2025. Maybe we're drafting top 5 or top 10, but the culture it looks different. It just looks different. We're more competitive. And like kind of like we're saying, the foundation's already being set. So I think that's part of it. Probably best case, right? You found your head coach, you have a good foundation, and you're in a position to get a quarterback in 2026 in the draft. I think that would be best case for the Jets.
It makes the worst case kind of tough because it is basically the inverse of that. But like, I got probably around Aaron Glenn that you didn't get your guy. And honestly, maybe worst case is that Justin Fields does actually look pretty good, but the rest doesn't. Right. Because then if you did get your bridge guy and you're like, wow, we may have actually found the reclamation project, but now we're realizing actually our roster isn't as good as we thought it was. Maybe last year wasn't a fluke and we have more issues than we thought. That would probably be a tough situation to leave the season with.
Yeah, true. I mean, it's definitely possible. I think, again, even though I think they're making the right moves, maybe Garrett Wilson just doesn't take another step and just is average. Like he's looked like a guy that can be elite, but hasn't gotten there yet. So maybe he doesn't take a step. And Fields being good would, like you said, it would kind of suck because it's like, well, dang, Fields could have led this team potentially maybe to the postseason if everything else was good around them. So Jets are another team that's like they're obviously rebuilding, so they're kind of in a good spot. Like you kind of like to be the rebuilding team rather than
Yeah,
the Colts or the Steelers, where it's
the
like okay,
purgatory
yeah,
teams.
exactly, or even the Texans or something like that. It's like you'd rather be the team, or maybe I wouldn't throw the Texans in there because Stroud, but point being is like you'd rather be the team rebuilding, and I think the Jets are heading in the right direction. So it's like worst case scenario for them is like picking top five wouldn't be a bad case for them. I think that would be
Right.
a good case. I think that would be a positive. I guess worst case is like kind of like you said, Fields is good enough to win 7 games, but not good enough to make a huge difference.
Yeah. England's not great, and you're just painfully mid.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
wouldn't be great. And then you're
that
just kind of
would.
stuck. Then you're going into next season thinking, I don't know what we do.
Yeah.
May have to force a QB pick where you don't want to or whatever. So, all right, on to what we'd probably both agree into the entire NFL, maybe the widest range of outcomes, the New England Patriots. What is the best case for the Patriots?
Ooh, best case, man. Best case could be really good. Like kind of like you're saying, it's like it's another team with a wide range of outcomes, man. Like best case is Drake May is elite. Like he continues to be the guy because Drake May is a fascinating prospect right now, man. It's a guy that, like by the numbers, wasn't the best rookie last year, but if you take into account situation, like what he did might have been the most impressive outside of Jaden, maybe because the situation was so poor around him, yet he still found a way to elevate the offense. So I think that's definitely in his range of outcomes to become okay, solidified himself as the franchise guy. Then of course you have to mention the Mike Vrabel aspect. If Mike Vrabel
Mm-hmm.
continues to show like he did in Tennessee, man, where he's a guy that will just always have a good team. Whether the roster's good or not, his team will play above their talent level because he's such a good head coach. That's very realistic. I mean, I would actually bet on that. I actually think that is going to happen. But there are some other things that need to happen as well, like with Drake May. And then continuing that, like some of these young guys, some of these young cats they've drafted end up being good. Some of these young receivers that they've invested in, and this draft, I mean, this draft in particular for the Patriots is a crucial one, man. It's a crucial one. It's one that we've talked about all offseason as being possibly the best in the NFL, but they have to live up to that. And of course, it starts with Will Campbell.
Yeah, I think starting, the Drake May side of it is a big part. Obviously, the QB with a lot of these teams is a massive part of it. And if he looks elite, I you're in good shape kind of regardless of a lot of things at that point. But to the point you noted, if you're proven right immediately that Mike Vrabel has this baseline of just elevating teams beyond what the roster says, which showed in Tennessee the entire time he was there, even in the last season, like they constantly outperformed what that roster was. And if that is proven right immediately, where you just see that elevation, I think that would be a huge, one of the best case scenarios. And then to your point, this draft has a massive impact. And this offseason specifically, they are slated to have 8 new starters from free agency plus Will Campbell. So 9 new starters. You could throw in like 10 with Kyle Williams, who's probably going to get amount of playing time, and Braden Swinson and Josh Farmer, who will get playing time. So you've completely overhauled this thing. And best case scenario is you nailed a lot of those signings, and this team does look better. And I think at that point, a playoff run is in the like making the playoffs with this team is within
It's
the range of
possible.
outcomes, and I think that would be the best case. Is all that comes together and you make the playoffs. Doesn't matter what happens then. Just getting there, I think, would be huge.
Yeah, you're still a ways away, and I think Patriots fans know
Yeah.
this. You're still ways away from competing in the AFC, but I think making the playoffs is a possibility. Now, a lot of fans might think that's insane, but I think with Mike Vrabel and what Drake May showed as a rookie, and again this crucial draft that they're going to be relying on, I think they could definitely make the playoffs. I think that is their best case.
Yep. All right. What about worst case?
Worst case is that Drake May doesn't live up to that potential, and he's not as good as we thought he was as a rookie. And I think even worse than that would be that all these offseason moves and the things they built around Drake May just don't work out, which is extremely possible. I mean, that's why we said the range of outcomes is so vast because it's possible Will Campbell is just not good. Like that's happens all the time with top 5 tackles. Like it's possible Will Campbell
Yeah.
sucks, and he never
His
becomes good.
slightly too short arms are just
Yeah,
that
exactly.
problematic.
Maybe his T-Rex arms come back to bite him. Um, or maybe it's one of those situations where Will Campbell's maybe even worse than that is Will Campbell's not good for the first 4 years of his career. Someone picks him up as a reclamation and then he becomes good, which is possible as that's kind of how offensive line play works in the league. But yeah, so like all these offseason additions just don't work out. None of these guys in the draft make a difference. Drake May's not the guy, and Vrabel's not able to elevate, and you're drafting top 5 again. And it's not a situation where you're going to be drafting another quarterback because you just drafted one in the top 5. So I think that's worst case scenario for the Patriots.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, specifically on the defensive side, they spent a lot of money on Milton Williams to get him away from the Panthers. And if he's
Harold
just
Landry.
not good, and the Harold Landry getting him back, and they signed him to too big of a deal as well. If those guys specifically look not good, then your defense is probably going to struggle because your front seven's not very good then. And yeah, again, Drake May, man, it a lot of it is on him. And if one of the worst cases, I don't know if it would be worst case, but is it scenarios like maybe the team does look good, but Drake doesn't. And then you could end up in QB purgatory like we've talked about, which would kind of suck, where you now have that coach that has a high baseline and a good roster, but Drake doesn't get better. And now you're wondering, what do you do at QB? And you're picking at pick 14. You won 7 or 8. I don't know. That would be tough. I don't know if it's worse, but I think what you kind of laid out is probably worst case for them.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. AFC East down. Final division.
One division left.
One division to go. Let's start with the Cincinnati Bengals. What is best case scenario for the Bengals?
Hopefully our boy Nate V is in the chat watching this. Best case scenario for the Bengals is they win a Super Bowl. I think that is absolutely in their range of outcomes. I think Joe Burrow gets a little too much hate around the league. I don't know why that is. Joe Burrow is without question a top 4 quarterback in the NFL. Now would place him at 4, but I think he is top 4, which is, that's the biggest piece of this, right, Dakota? It's, do you have your quarterback? The Bengals obviously do. They just locked up their 2 wide receivers in the offseason, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So this offense, the offense isn't taking a step back. That's my point. The offense is going. They have such a high baseline. They were fantastic last year. It was the defense that was the real issue. So the best case scenario is the offense continues to do what they do, but the defense drastically improves, which I think is absolutely possible, man. I think a lot of their players last year just hit the low range of their outcomes and were just not good for whatever reason. So I think as a unit, they were so bad last year, man, that's going to be hard not to be better. And if they make it, see, that's the thing with the Bengals, man. If they would have made it in the playoffs last year, that's a team that you did not want to see in the playoffs last year, man.
No.
Just the way they were playing, the way they looked on offense. So if they make the playoffs, they've already shown they've shown they can do it. Once they get there, they can do it. They showed that in 21 when they made the Super Bowl. So, and once you get to the Super Bowl, man, it's anyone's ball game. And I think they can absolutely win it.
Yeah, I think if the Bengals had made the playoffs last year, there's a solid chance Joe Burrow wins MVP just simply from that, because statistically and how well he played. And it was like quiet, because by the time they had kind of hit that hill of the climb they needed to make to get to the postseason, I think a lot of people checked out on paying attention to them. And Joe Burrow, and he continued to absolutely ball out and crawl back to where they were inches away from making the playoffs.
They had a chance.
Yeah, and honestly, what I would probably say is best case, to your point, obviously the defensive side, I would say specifically shouting out like Dax Hill, moving him to corner and him starting outside specifically, I think could make an impact. If the defense is better, would be great. And then to be completely honest, best case may just be don't lose to the Patriots, right? Like don't lose that one game.
The games.
Because you just said, if you make it to the postseason,
you can beat anyone.
You could beat anybody. So if they can, best case is just not dropping, not starting as slow as they have in the past and not losing one of those games early on. And then you're going to make the postseason at that point. And once you get there, they could beat anybody.
Yeah, I agree. And that's That has been a big problem for the Bengals. So part of their best case is stop these slow starts that just don't make a lot of
Yeah,
sense.
like Nate mentioned, starting
Yeah,
0-2 numerous
exactly.
times.
Exactly. And then another part, more on the defensive side of the ball, Brees Hendrickson, right? You get him under
Yeah.
contract, and you finally get your rookie in there, Shamar Stewart. And maybe Shamar Stewart can be this guy that he would be one of the first, but not the first. Daniil Hunter did it. One of these
True.
high upside athletic freaks in college that didn't have production, that did not show production rushing the passer, and then they for some reason figure it out in the NFL. It's happened before. It doesn't happen a lot, especially in the first round. But it's very possible, man. He has the tools and he's gonna be a good run defender. So that's one thing that you can feel good about as a Bengals fan. He's gonna be a good run defender. But if he hits the ground running as a pass rusher, then all of a sudden you got a lethal duo, man. Lethal duo. And I think it's very possible. Do I think it's likely? No, I don't think it's likely with Shamar Stewart's production, but it is a possibility and part of their best case scenario, I think, in 2025.
For sure. And I think it ties in, yeah, the defense getting better. If Shamar Stewart, Demetrius Knight is currently slotted to start. And then also Barrett Carter could get playing time, who 2 years ago as a sophomore or whatever was looking like a first or second round draft pick. So if both those rookie linebackers look really good, and then to your point, if Shamar can put it together as a pass rusher, then that may breed the defense just taking a step forward, which is what they need. All right. What about worst case?
Worst case is the
Heartbreak.
defense is where they have been, man, and they just aren't. They pick up where they left off last year. One of the worst defenses in the NFL, and they missed the playoffs. I think the thing is with the Bengals, I don't feel the same with them as I feel about the Ravens or the Bills or the Chiefs. I think it's very possible they missed the playoffs for one reason. I think that they did it last year. They missed it last year. It's possible with how bad that defense has been that they do miss the playoffs, which would be terrible, man, because then you're getting people fired, right? And you're getting a new system in, and then people start to continue to question Joe Burrow, even though I wouldn't even think that's fair. Like, I don't even think it's fair to blame Joe Burrow for last year. I just don't think that's fair at all. But that would happen. That would be part of the worst case scenario. You would have people saying, "Well, is Joe Burrow actually elite?" And then they would fire Zach Taylor. And so, yeah, I mean, it could be bad for the Bengals if they barely miss the postseason again.
I would say what I would throw out as a potential worst case is the defense gets better, but the offensive line, specifically the interior, is so bad that it affects the offense to the point where it kind of balances out to being like the same team last year in terms of win total and what they're able to achieve. Because then you're like, all right, we finally fixed that side, but now because they've signed Lucas Patrick to start at right guard, and then you've got Dylan Fairchild as a rookie third rounder projected to start.
And they still have
So
questions at tackle. I mean, it's not
and
just the interior.
exactly, and then
The
Amarius
tackles
Mims in
are
year
even
two. Yeah,
right.
the offensive line could just be a problem. And I think worst case obviously is everything's terrible, but I think I've gravitated towards these throughout this episode of like having some positive that then something else negates it is a really tough feeling to
Like
have. So
something
like
you
the
don't
defense,
expect, kind of.
exactly. The defense is better and you're like, wow, but then the offensive line is just such a problem that it holds the offense back and they can't achieve what they did last season offensively.
Yeah. Part of their worst case too is Trey holds out, Shamar Stewart never signs, and then all of a
He
sudden
re-enters
you
the
have
draft, gets drafted by the
yeah,
Ravens next year.
exactly. And all of a sudden you have like nobody to rush the passer whatsoever. I think sadly all of that is see, that's
It's
the
like
thing with
it's
the
possible.
Bengals, man. It's like the reason I don't feel as good about the Bengals as I do these other teams is they're just not there in the trenches, dude. They really aren't. Like
Yeah.
both sides of the ball, they have question marks up front. Of course, I heavily believe in their perimeter players and specifically on offense and their quarterback, but it's going to be tough with that offensive defensive line.
And it's depressing to see Joe Burrow's career potentially getting
Wasted.
derailed by poor offensive line and just bad defensive play. You know, we've seen in the past other quarterbacks have suffered through the same thing, and he elevates them to a baseline.
You just had to bring up Andrew Luck. I knew what you're doing.
Yeah, I know, man. I mean, luckily,
yeah.
and I mean, he has had the injuries as well, which is really unfortunate. But I mean, even other guys were like, you know, I mean, Herbert had it there for a minute, to be honest, when their offense was good, the defense wasn't. But yeah. All right. What about Cleveland Browns? What is their best case scenario?
They're not going to be
Oof.
good in 2025. I'll be honest. They're not going to be good this year, but I love the direction the Browns are headed in. They're still recovering from this Deshaun Watson thing, right? They're still having to recover from this insane contract and these all these picks that they gave up, and it hurt their depth for so many years. But I think the Browns navigated this offseason so well, dude. Like, to get out of this. I think just how they handled the draft, trading back, getting another first round pick, and then the chances they've taken on at quarterback. I think it's been a really, really good offseason for the Browns. So I think their best case is they're starting to build up this foundation, right? Okay, they re-signed Myles Garrett. They have Mason Graham, who could be a potential elite player coming out of this draft. This defensive line with Myles Garrett, for one, such a high baseline. But then you add a guy like Mason Graham, who also can be elite. Then you're looking at one of the best lines in the league.
Yeah.
And then part of their best case too is one of these QB swings hit, Dakota, like Dylan Gabriel or how am I blanking on Sanders? What is my goodness, dude? What is going on? It's been a long show. Of course I know. Golly, what is his first name, brother?
Shadur.
Shadur. Good Lord, how am I forgetting Shadur Sanders' name? Anyway, it's been a long day. Shadur or Dylan Gabriel hit. Like, one of those guys in the draft end up hitting because they didn't invest a ton, right? They didn't invest a ton, and they're both on rookie deals. Like, if they end up hitting on one of those two guys, it's like, okay, boom, you have a Brock Purdy-esque deal, where it's like, okay, you can build up around him. Of course, you're still held down by that Deshaun contract, but at least you're on your way of getting out of that Deshaun Watson disaster.
I honestly think that is absolutely best case scenario is, and it may be not super likely, but if one of those QBs are good, then it does help mitigate the Deshaun stuff a bit more, where you have a guy on a rookie deal who's not even a first round QB, where you're not paying him first round money. So you have even more flexibility there, but you still have like a top 5 pick. You're probably not going to be good enough with the roster to do that. And you have another first round pick. So you're then perfectly set up to fix this thing.
Sure.
And I think, if I remember correctly, with the way his contract works, next season will be the time to finally be able to axe it. It will come with a massive cap hit, but I think next year is when they can finally address it. Exactly. And then if you don't have to worry about, because to be honest, like with Myles Garrett contract and guys on the roster, like, even if you're drafting top 5 next year, you do have to think about the fact that you're going to have like a $45 million guaranteed contract that you may not even be able to afford depending on how things work out. So yeah, one of those QBs hitting would be absolutely best case scenario. And you still pick pretty high, and you have the other first round pick from the Jags trade. So you have 2 firsts to now build this roster up to then set yourself up to succeed once you move on from the Deshaun Watson disaster.
Yeah. I mean, all very good points. I think part of their best case too is the Jags suck. Right? If the Jags suck, then boom, all of a sudden you have
maybe you get the number 1 pick anyway.
Yeah, you have 2 chances at the number 1 overall pick. I think that's. I mean, I don't know if the Jags are. It's possible though. I mean, you never know with injuries and things like that. So, yeah, man. I mean, they have a chance to get out of the situation they put themselves in. Which I think this is the first time we're saying that, right? Like, this is the first time that I actually feel like they have an opportunity. Because the thing is, I actually think they have the right coach. I think Stefanski's the right guy. I think they have the right front office. I think they made one really terrible move. Like, which, I mean, listen, it's the worst move in NFL history. So it's going to set you back a couple years. Like, that's just the reality. But the fact that you're sitting here saying, I mean, I didn't expect, if you told me 2 years ago that they have a chance to get out of this at this point and actually find a way out of this disaster, I would have called you crazy. I think I would have thought it was going to take longer. So the fact that they actually have a chance now is, I mean, Browns fans should be really happy about that, dude.
And the only other little thing I would just add on the best case is that Mason Graham is as advertised as well, and you look like you have an absolute wrecking ball of a defensive line with him and Myles Garrett. Leaving this season thinking that would be great. All right, what about worst case for the Browns?
Another team that worst case is tough for me. It's kind of like the Jets. It's
Yeah.
like I don't know how many
Yeah.
worst case because like they're not going to be good. So it's like it's not a win total thing for worst case. I think worst case is I don't know, man. Like all the QB swings miss, right? All the QB swings just look not good. And that maybe Mason Graham's not as advertised, kind of like what we're talking about. And then the Jags take this massive step forward and win their division, maybe make a playoff run. So all of a sudden that first round pick is not as good as you expected. I think, dude, one of their worst case scenarios to me is Travis Hunter is generational, right? Like Travis Hunter is just a
Ooh,
guy who's
I
just
like
like
that.
a completely franchise changing player, which is possible. And you passed up on that.
Dude, that's a very good point. To be honest, because I agree, they're a tough one for worst case. I think worst case, like you mentioned, would be the QBs are terrible, but they're picking like fifth or sixth, and then you're not even in good position to replace them. And then the Jags were successful, but it does seem like, to be honest, their worst case could be fully dependent on what happens in Jacksonville, how
Yeah,
good that
so
draft pick
true.
is, and then if we're sitting here, especially if Mason Graham is also just okay, he's turns out the size is a problem, him coming in under what everybody thought he would, and then Travis Hunter wins offensive and defensive rookie of the year.
Oh
He wins both. And you're
dude,
like, oh
he does
my
something.
gosh.
Dude, if he wins offensive and defensive rookie of the year, that would be brutal. I think that's worst case scenario. He wins offensive and defensive rookie of the year. Oh,
It's just
that's
still recovering
fantastic.
from that at that point. Like if you're a Browns fan, I know you've been through a lot, but that have to be
Yeah,
a straw. You missed out on a literal generational guy that won both awards, and you're like, and we still have to push John
yeah,
Watson under contract. Like, whew,
exactly, dude. Especially after hearing, like, who knows what the shouty shows are saying because we're not listening to those shouty shows. But
no.
after hearing all the like the astute football watchers say, "Oh man, the Browns made such a good decision, such an analytically sound decision trading back," and then, wow, you just gave up, potentially offensive and defensive rookie of the year. I've not heard that one, man. That's a good one. It's
That would
possible.
be. I just thought like because then like how is that gonna, his eligibility for that will also be fascinating to see. But yeah, it is. Jacksonville may determine how good you all feel because I would say unfortunately most Browns fans are probably hoping Travis Hunter sucks
Yeah,
because
I mean, you have
it'll
to.
ease the pain a bit even
Yeah,
regardless of what else
exactly.
happens. But yeah, oof, oof. All right. What about the Baltimore? I mean, Baltimore is a similar.
Easy
I
one.
mean, Bills and Ravens, right? They're almost the same thing to a degree with that. Best case for them.
Best case is Mark Andrews doesn't drop a 2 point conversion that potentially gets you to the AFC Championship. I mean, listen, I think the Bill or the Ravens are a little different because Lamar has those postseason questions, right, Dakota? Like I was talking about earlier, how Josh Allen really doesn't have these postseason questions. It's really just been a team being unlucky. I think the Ravens and Lamar do have those questions a little bit more, even though
Yeah.
Lamar was solid in that Bills game. He wasn't fantastic. He wasn't like completely, Lamar Jackson level that we expect in the regular season. So I think part of their best case is Lamar in the postseason all throughout the postseason, because there's no reason he can't be. And then continuing on that, I think this is another defense that I'm looking at saying this could be the best defense in the NFL. And I think this is one of the more realistic outcomes for this defense. I think they already have the best secondary in the league. And they added to that with Jari Alexander. And then the X factor to me, man, in the offseason is Mike Green. If they just let the Baltimore Ravens get an elite pass rush. Because listen, dude, you can go back on our mock draft on this show, Dakota. I had Mike Green going in the top 10. I think that's where the talent was at. So if he has his head on straight and all that, the sexual assault allegations were just that, they were just allegations, and he's a fine dude. My God, dude, that defense could be special.
I think, yeah, Lamar putting it together in the playoffs enough to be able to carry them would obviously be great. But yeah, I think to be honest, the best case maybe that does you don't even need that, right? Like your point, the defense is so good, that it doesn't matter almost what Lamar does in the postseason. That it can almost not to say carry him, but carry him to a point where it doesn't have to put it on him as much, and let him get to a Super Bowl and see what he can do. Because yeah, I mean this defense. To your point, like they drafted Malachi Starks. They got gifted the best safety in the draft at
And they already
the
have the
back end
best
of it.
safety in the league in Kyle Hamilton.
And now you add that to it, and then you draft Mike Green, who, to your point, like talent wise, was one of the best players in this draft. Adding that to that defensive line, and then it's back to the secondary. They just got Jair Alexander,
Yes.
so you've got Jair, Marlon
Marlon
Humphrey, Malachi
and
Starks,
Nate
Kyle
Wiggins,
Hamilton,
who
and Nate
showed
Wiggins.
he was good as a rookie. Dude, I'm telling you, it's easily the best secondary. Like, why do they even need Jair Alexander? It makes no sense.
Dude. It's not
even
it's not even
close.
close, even without Jair.
Because Kyle Hamilton, I mean, dude, Kyle Hamilton is the best safety in football. And so already the baseline's really good, but the depth of it's really good. Their versatility is really good. So I even feel like they're injury proof. Like that secondary is elite, man. So if you add an elite pass rusher, because that's what the Ravens have been missing, right? They have been missing
They've
a
missed.
truly elite pass rusher. They have tried. They've tried in the first round time after time, and they have missed. If Mike Green is that guy, which again, a lot of people thought he was the second best rusher in the entire draft class behind Abdul Carter. A lot of people were saying if he had a Buckeye on the side of his helmet, he is a top 5 draft pick. That's the potential of Mike Green. And you add that to already an insane defense with Lamar Jackson, with Derrick Henry. It's like, dude, the best case scenario for this team is obviously Super Bowl, Lombardi.
Yeah, I mean, looking at this roster, I'm like, my God, if they just had, I mean, they have D Hop now that could be the true X a little later in his career, but they have him now finally. This roster is honestly ridiculous
Loaded.
looking. And to your point, like
Loaded.
they also have Ardarius Washington. I know he's hurt right now, but who looked really good as one of their undrafted guys they got a while back, who's kind of developed. And they got Chidobe Awuzie. So like their depth, to be honest, their backup secondary is probably better than some secondaries in the NFL.
You're probably right, dude. You're 100% probably right about that.
It's crazy. So yeah, best case, all of that comes together, and there's the best roster in football on paper wins the Lombardi.
Yeah.
What about worst case for the Ravens?
I think the biggest worst case is the O-line. I think that's their biggest question mark is that offensive line. I think that offensive line has been kind of shaky at times. It's not been the best. I think Lamar helps out the offensive line at times with just, his ability as a runner. So I think the offensive line is part of their worst case. They continue to look shaky, and cause more hits on Lamar. That's not, nobody wants to see that. And then I guess part of the worst case too is, I mean, none of these rookies hit or whatever. And, Mike Green turns out to be a bad dude and just doesn't hit. Even though there's not a lot of risk in that, even if he, doesn't. And then ultimately it's kind of like we were saying with the Bills, man. It's another heartbreaking postseason loss. Mark Andrews, a guy who's a sure-handed guy, drops another 2-point conversion or something silly like that, which, I mean, those are the kind of plays, dude, as a fan base and even as players, I'm sure keep you up at night, man. I mean, that's the difference in football, right? It's a game of inches, as they say, man. And even, sometimes the better team loses just based on unlucky things like that. So that's obviously possible, man. It's football. You're in the AFC like we've discussed. Really hard conference to win. So yeah, worst case scenario, another heartbreaking divisional or AFC championship round loss.
And I would say that it's on Lamar. If it's on Lamar too, that he just doesn't play well again, then that's just such a horrible position to be in. Of his career is looking a little like Peyton, right? Like the playoff success just not being there, but in the regular season, the guy is the best, arguably the best, and has a couple MVPs. And if he just has another fantastic regular season, and then he's just the reason things fall short, where you can pinpoint it on him, I think that would be. Because what do you do about it? You just hope that the next season it's different,
get it together.
and that's a tough place to be in. But
it is tough, especially in the AFC. I'll also throw out Derrick Henry regression. Like I'm to the point where I'm convinced the dude's going to be running like that at 40, but like because he's a freak of nature, man. Just like he has defied all odds as a running back, and I'm not even predicting this, but listen, I mean the law of averages, everything we know about running backs. Eventually in their 30s they start to regress. So I'm
Yeah,
assuming
yeah.
eventually that will happen to Derrick Henry. We have absolutely zero evidence of that right now, but maybe one day. So maybe that's
No,
part of
he's
the worst
he's,
case.
he's going out with 1,500 yards in his last season. He'll retire on top at
I
crisp
would
age.
not be surprised whatsoever.
All right, we made it to the last team in the AFC, the Pittsburgh Steelers. What is the best case scenario for the Steelers?
I hate to say it. Is it 9 wins? Is it Mike Tomlin keeps his winning streak
Best and
alive?
worst case scenario are the exact same.
Here's the thing with the Steelers. Again, kind of a team. They're weirdly a team with a wide range of outcomes, but not because, like, if I had to bet on anything in this season, like anything, I would bet Steelers are winning 9 games. That would be my bet. However, I think there is a small percentage chance on, like, both extremes. There's a small percentage chance that Aaron Rodgers turns back the clock and he becomes Aaron Rodgers with a chip on his shoulder. And he's kind of said, it's unclear with that guy. Pretty much everything's unclear with that guy, but he's kind of said it's his last season. So maybe he goes, like, it's his farewell tour and he plays like old A-Rod. And DK is DK, and that's a great connection. And then their defense is going to be great. That's the thing. That's why I think the baseline for this team is high, and the
Yeah.
9-win thing is like a meme, but at the same time it's kind of legit because this defense is top 5 in the NFL. I think it's possible that they could go on a run. Do I think they could get to the Super Bowl? It's so tough in the AFC. I don't think that's likely. I think more likely it's, they win a playoff game and they're competitive in the divisional round, and then they eventually lose to the Bills. Like, I think that's probably, as far as wins are concerned, the best case for this team.
It is tough for me to believe because, like, at the end of the day, Aaron did not look as bad as some people said, but he didn't look great last year. He just didn't. And if that is what Aaron Rodgers is now, then the best case is probably capping out in the division round, like you said. But if there is this tiny bit of him left, that is the old Aaron Rodgers, and adding DK Metcalf, and putting him in this offense in an environment that Mike Tomlin has created that has been able to maintain some of the most mentally deranged people in the NFL. If he can put it all together, and Mike Tomlin can, honestly, really the best case, probably he solidifies his career as probably the best coach in terms of handling people, and they go on a run with Aaron Rodgers and make a push. I think that is within the range, and the defense, to your point, is going to be a big portion of that because honestly, I think it is probably safe to say that Aaron Rodgers has never had a defense this good before. Even some of the best ones in Green Bay. So I think that's it. But it is tough to me seeing that outcome of them really going on a run to, like, compete for a Super Bowl.
Maybe best case is 2015 Broncos, but even better at the QB position. Like, because Peyton was, yeah, he was bad in 2015. I don't think he was all the way. I think in the postseason he was solid, but I will say he was, for the most part, not himself. Obviously,
because his neck was gone.
Exactly, his neck was gone. So maybe best case is 2015 Broncos, that this defense is at that level, which I think is possible. Like, that's how good this defense is. The defensive line is absolutely absurd. The front seven is insane. They added Jalen Ramsey. They subtract Minka Fitzpatrick. It's kind of a wash to me. It's like, I think Jalen's ceiling's probably higher at this point, and he plays a more valuable position. So who knows how that move works out. But at the end of the day, this defense is still going to be top 5 in the NFL. And can that carry Aaron Rodgers to a Super Bowl? And Aaron Rodgers kind of just be a passenger on his way to going out on top.
Yeah, and I think the trade thing's interesting. I would say I do lean more agreeing with the Steelers side of it. It's very much a let's go try to win right now. We need a more valuable position because they got Juan Thornhill in the offseason. So you've got Deshaun Elliott and Juan Thornhill, who are two solid safeties, whereas the other option for corner would have been Beanie Bishop. So, like, I think the trade-off there in terms of the talent-wise will work out well for them. Doesn't make as much sense to me on the the Dolphin side. And then they also have Darius Slay. So they're really saying, like, let's get some age in here. The average age of the guys they signed is brutal because they've also
Yeah.
got Robbie Trees over there.
Oh yeah.
Um,
They're
so
getting
yeah,
up
I
there.
think best case is all those offseason additions work and they go on a run. What about worst case scenario?
Oh man, worst case scenario I think is the non-win thing, right? Like it's just
Yeah,
continue to
it
be
really
in
is.
QB purgatory. I think I'll add to best case before because I said I think both extremes are possible. I think it's possible that maybe Aaron gets hurt, which again we don't like to talk about injuries, but or maybe they just for some reason suck and they can get a QB. I think that's extremely unlikely though. I think
Yeah, yeah.
more than likely is the 8-9 win. You maybe squeak into the playoffs and then you get obliterated by the Chiefs or the Bills. Like that's the best, or I think that's the worst case scenario, man. Because again, it's like okay, the Aaron Rodgers thing didn't work, and you know he's not the future, so you still have a question mark at quarterback. And I think half the Steelers fan base, or at least a good portion of the fan base, because I know one personally, wants Mike Tomlin gone. And I think part of the reason that they want Mike Tomlin gone is not because he's a bad coach, but because he is partly the reason they're stuck right now. They're stuck in this purgatory where they cannot compete because he offers a high baseline where it's like, okay, we're not going to be a 5-win football team because Mike Tomlin and the defense is going to be too good to get us there to draft a quarterback.
Yeah, and I completely agree. It is, yeah. I mean, worst case is everything they did didn't work, but their baseline still puts them in purgatory. And you're either having to force a draft pick for a quarterback next year in the 18 to 20 something range, or try to trade a haul to move up and get somebody else. I would say the other thing I would add is specifically with DK is that it looks like you made a poor decision in trading Pickens and trading for DK. If it looks like, maybe DK just doesn't fit in this offense as well or whatever, maybe Pickens lights it up for the Cowboys. But I think that would be part of it too, is that everything else was kind of an experiment, but that was one of the biggest moves that I think is still a long-term thing of who you want your wide receiver one to be. And if it looks like you made the wrong decision there as well, then that's just kind of icing on top of a unfortunate situation.
Another long-term-ish thing that you're looking at for the Steelers, because obviously they're trying to win now with Rodgers, but you also want a good foundation for the future. Is the offensive line's not set. Like they have starters filled in, but nobody has truly shown they're the guy. Like Broderick Jones or Fashanu from last year haven't shown that. Yeah, Fatanu, excuse me. Haven't shown that they are good yet. Like they're still young guys that are developing. So those tackles are still a question mark, a big question mark for this team.
Honestly, that may be the true worst case, to be honest, is that Aaron Rodgers does look elite and it looks like they can, like maybe they even are going on a run, but the offensive line is the thing that prevents them from winning something. Like Aaron Rodgers gets sacked like 8 times in the divisional round or AFC Championship. They make it there, but the Ravens just eat them alive or something.
Oh, man,
that would be
brutal.
That would be tough,
dude.
Because then it's like we could have done it if our offensive line didn't suck.
I will say after this pod, I found out that you are really good at coming up with the absolute worst of the worst case scenarios. Very specific worst case scenarios from Dakota here. That is a very specific and probably worst case scenario for the Steelers.
Yeah, not the most likely things, but like, man, I'm just thinking if I was like putting in your headspace of a fan of like what would make me want to end being a fan.
Yeah, exactly.
The most. All right, we did it. That's 16 teams, 4 divisions later. That is our best and worst case scenario for every AFC team. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Had a pretty active chat tonight, which was always good to see. Appreciate everybody that did tune in live. Appreciate everybody watching this after the fact. Please like, share, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Leave a comment on the video as well. Let us know what you think is the best and worst case for some of these teams. Really appreciate all the support. But until next time.
Thanks for talking ball with us.